The morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete platform where three tall beings stood in chains. Their skin looked like crystal, catching the light and throwing rainbows across the gray walls. These were Etherians, and they were beautiful even in their sadness. Dr. Marcus Chen pushed through the crowd of alien buyers. His work clothes were old and patched, nothing like the fancy outfits worn by the rich traders around him. He clutched a small datapad that showed his bank account. 3,000 credits. That was all he had saved in 2 years. The auctioneer, a fat creature with too many arms, spoke into his microphone. His voice carried across the auction yard with practiced boredom. Next we have Lot 47. 3 Etherian specimens, ages 32, 35, and 28 standard years, all in perfect health, strong telepathic abilities, long lifespan expected. Marcus watched the 3 aliens on the platform. The tallest one, a female with silver hair, kept her eyes down. Next to her stood a male with blue markings on his face. The third was younger, with golden skin that seemed to glow. However, the auctioneer continued, and his voice became harsh. These specimens have been tested for 15 years. 0 successful breeding attempts. 0 offspring. They are completely useless for reproduction. The crowd murmured. Some people laughed. Others walked away. Marcus saw the 3 Etherians flinch at the words. The female's shoulders shook slightly. Starting bid is 10,000 credits, the auctioneer called out. Nobody raised their hand. 5,000 credits? Still nothing. Marcus had come here looking for help with his children. His wife had died 3 years ago, and he struggled to care for his daughter and son while working long days at the research station. He needed someone to watch them, maybe help with cooking and cleaning. He had thought about buying a household android, but his small savings could not afford one. He had not expected to see people being sold. 1,000 credits? The auctioneer's voice showed his annoyance. A few hands went up, but the bidders looked bored. They were probably buying the Etherians for manual labor or dangerous work. Marcus looked at the 3 aliens again. The younger one had tears running down his golden cheeks. The male was trying to comfort him while staying silent. The female just stared at the ground. Going once at 1,000 credits, the auctioneer said. Marcus thought about his children at home. Emma was only 8 years old. Jamie was 12, but still needed guidance. They were good kids, but they were lonely too. After their mother died, their small family felt empty and quiet. These 3 beings looked lost and scared. Nobody wanted them because they could not have babies. But Marcus did not need them to have babies. He needed them to be part of a family. Going twice at 1,000 credits. Marcus raised his hand. 3,000 credits, he called out. The crowd turned to look at him. The auctioneer seemed surprised. Did you hear the announcement, sir? These specimens are infertile. Completely worthless for breeding programs. I heard you, Marcus said. His voice was steady. 3,000 credits for all 3. The other bidders shrugged and walked away. Why fight over defective goods? Going once, twice, sold to the human in Section 12. Marcus felt his heart pounding as he walked to the payment station. 3,000 credits was everything he had. But something about those 3 sad faces made him feel like this was right. 20 minutes later, he stood in front of the Etherians as a guard unlocked their chains. Up close, they were even more beautiful. They were also much taller than him. The shortest one was still a head taller than Marcus. My name is Dr. Marcus Chen, he said softly. The 3 aliens looked at each other. Marcus noticed they did not speak, but their expressions changed like they were talking in their minds. The female spoke first. Her voice was musical, like wind chimes. Why did you buy us? You heard what the auctioneer said. We are broken. You are not broken, Marcus said firmly. You are people, not things. And people are not broken just because they cannot do one specific thing. The male stepped forward. What do you want us to do? I want you to come home with me. Help me take care of my children. Maybe help around the house. But mostly, I want you to be safe. The younger one wiped his tears. You want us to be your servants? Marcus shook his head. I want you to be my family. If you want to be? Uh, the three Etherians stared at him. In all their years of captivity, nobody had ever used the word family about them. What are your names? Marcus asked. I am Lyra, the female said quietly. Zephyr, said the male. Nova, whispered the youngest. Nice to meet you, Lyra, Zephyr and Nova. Are you ready to come home? As they walked toward Marcus's small transport ship, Zephyr spoke quietly to Marcus. Why did you spend all your money on us? You could have bought one healthy worker for that price. Marcus smiled sadly. My wife used to say that a family is not about being perfect. It is about choosing to love people anyway. You three looked like you needed someone to choose you. Lyra looked back at the auction building, then at Marcus. We have never had someone choose us before. We were made in laboratories. We have always been told what to do. Well, that changes now, Marcus said. From now on, you get to choose too. As their ship lifted off from the auction planet, the three Etherians pressed their faces to the windows. Below them, the gray buildings grew smaller. Above them, stars waited in the black sky. For the first time in their lives, they were flying toward a home instead of another cage. The research station on New Terra looked small as their ship approached. Marcus had built it himself over several years, adding rooms when he needed them. It was not fancy, but it was home. Emma and Jamie pressed their faces against the front window as the ship landed. Marcus had told them he was bringing home some new family members, but he had not explained exactly what that meant. Dad, are those the helpers you mentioned? Jamie asked, staring at the three tall figures walking down the ship's ramp. They are much bigger than I thought they would be, Emma whispered. Marcus smiled. Remember what I taught you about judging people by how they look? Both children nodded. Their father had always told them that being different was not the same as being wrong. Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova stood awkwardly in the main room of the house. They had never been in a family home before. Everything was so small compared to the massive breeding facilities they knew. But it felt warm and lived in. This is Emma and Jamie, Marcus said, putting his hands on his children's shoulders. Emma is 8, and Jamie is 12. Kids, this is Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova. Emma waved shyly. Jamie just stared with open curiosity. Are you really aliens? Jamie asked. Zephyr smiled for the first time since leaving the auction. Yes, we are. Are you really humans? Of course we are, Emma giggled. That is a silly question. It is only silly if you have met many humans before, Nova said gently. We have not. Marcus showed the three Etherians to their rooms. He had quickly converted 3 storage areas into bedrooms, adding beds and basic furniture. I know it is not much, but we can make them better together. Lyra touched the soft blanket on her bed. We have never had our own rooms before. We always slept in group quarters. Well, these are yours now, Marcus said. You can decorate them however you want. Change anything you do not like. That evening, Marcus cooked dinner for everyone. It was simple food. Pasta with vegetables. But he had made extra to feed 3 more people. They all sat around the kitchen table, which was now very crowded. So, what do you 3 like to do? Marcus asked. The Etherians looked confused. What we like to do? Lyra repeated slowly. Yes, hobbies, interests, things that make you happy. Zephyr and Nova looked at each other through their telepathic connection. Nobody had ever asked them about happiness before. We were taught to follow orders, Zephyr said. We learned basic skills for maintenance and care. But likes and dislikes were not considered important. Emma looked sad. That sounds boring. I like to draw pictures and read stories and play games. What are stories? Nova asked. Both children stared in shock. You do not know what stories are? Jamie asked. We were not given recreational materials, Lyra explained. Only training materials and medical information. Emma jumped up from her chair. Dad, can I show them my books? Marcus nodded, and Emma ran to her room. She came back carrying an armload of colorful books. These are storybooks, she said, climbing onto Lyra's lap without fear. This one is about a princess who saves a dragon. This one is about a boy who can fly. This one is about a cat who solves mysteries. Lyra held the book carefully, looking at the bright pictures. These images are beautiful. And you say there are words that tell tales? Yes. Want me to read you one? That night, Emma sat in Lyra's lap and read 3 whole books out loud. Lyra listened with wonder, asking questions about every character and plot twist. Her musical voice made Emma's simple words sound like songs when she repeated them. Over the following weeks, patterns began to form in their new life together. Each morning, Marcus would make breakfast while Nova watched carefully, learning how human food was prepared. Nova had precise control over their movements, which made them excellent at measuring and timing. Soon, Nova was making breakfast for everyone, adding small improvements each day. Zephyr spent hours with Marcus in his laboratory. Marcus was working on ways to help planets grow better crops and cleaner air. Zephyr had a natural understanding of how plants and air and soil work together. Their questions made Marcus think about his research in new ways. Your people came from a very different world than ours, Marcus explained one day, showing Zephyr data about New Terra's atmosphere. Yes, our homeworld had much more complex weather patterns, Zephyr said, studying the numbers. But I notice your soil composition here has some unusual mineral combinations. Have you tested how they affect plant root development? Marcus stopped what he was doing. No, I have not. Why do you ask? I can sense chemical interactions that might not show up in your standard tests. The minerals in this soil might actually help plants grow stronger, but only if they are treated in a specific way. That afternoon, Marcus ran the tests, Zephyr suggested. The results were better than he had hoped. Meanwhile, Lyra discovered the magic of human stories. She read everything she could find in Marcus's small library. When she finished all the books, she started making up stories for Emma and Jamie at bedtime. Once upon a time, Lyra would begin, sitting between the children on Emma's bed. There was a lonely star who forgot how to shine. Her stories were unlike anything in human books. They were full of impossible colors and creatures that lived in the spaces between thoughts. The children would fall asleep, smiling, dreaming of crystal cities and singing planets. One evening, Marcus found all 5 of them curled together on the living room couch, watching an old movie on his small screen. Emma was asleep against Lyra's shoulder. Jamie was explaining the plot to Zephyr in whispers. Nova was taking notes about human entertainment. Looking at them, Marcus felt something he had not felt since his wife died. The house felt full again, not just with people, but with laughter and questions and the comfortable noise of family life. Marcus, Lyra said softly, not wanting to wake Emma. Why did you really buy us? Marcus thought for a moment. You looked like you needed someone to believe in you. And we needed someone to believe in us too. Zephyr smiled. We were taught that our value came from what we could produce. You are teaching us that our value comes from who we are. That is what families do, Marcus said. They help each other remember they are worth loving. Outside, the moons of New Terra cast silver light through the windows. Inside, 5 beings from 2 different worlds had become something new together. They had become home. 6 months had passed since the 3 Etherians joined Marcus's family. The research station felt like a real home now. Nova cooked meals that somehow tasted better than anything Marcus had ever made. Lyra filled the evenings with stories that made Emma laugh and Jamie think. Zephyr helped Marcus with his work, asking questions that led to important discoveries. Then the emergency alarm started screaming. Marcus ran to his communication console, his family gathering behind him. The message that came through made his face go pale. This is Colony Central to all stations. Code Red Emergency. The terraforming project in Section 7 has failed catastrophically. Toxic contamination spreading through the water table. All citizens must boil water before drinking. Stay inside until further notice. Dad, what does that mean? Emma asked, pressing close to his side. Marcus sat down heavily. Remember how I have been working to make Earth plants grow better on New Terra? We introduced new crops to help feed the 50,000 people who live here. But something went wrong. The plants are making the water poisonous. Zephyr stepped forward. How poisonous. If it reaches the main water supply, people will get sick. Very sick. We might have to evacuate the entire planet. Marcus spent the next 2 days working without sleep. He tested water samples, ran computer models, and contacted other scientists across the galaxy. Nothing worked. The contamination was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. On the third morning, Marcus sat at his desk, staring at failed test results. Dark circles hung under his eyes. His hands shook from too much coffee and too little sleep. The chemical reaction is too complex, he said to himself. The Earth plants are releasing compounds that should not exist. When they mix with Nuterra's natural minerals, they create something completely new and completely deadly. Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova had been watching him with growing concern. They could sense his desperation through their telepathic connection. Marcus, Lyra said gently, may we look at your data? Marcus laughed bitterly. You are welcome to try. I have been working on this for 72 hours. The best scientists in the galaxy cannot figure it out. He showed them to his laboratory. Charts and graphs covered every wall. Test tubes filled with poisoned water samples covered every table. The smell of chemicals filled the air. Zephyr walked slowly around the room, looking at everything but not touching anything. After a few minutes, they stopped and closed their eyes. I can feel it, Zephyr said quietly. Feel what? Marcus asked. The wrongness. The way the molecules are twisted together. They are fighting each other, instead of working together. Nova joined Zephyr near the largest table of samples. They also closed their eyes, reaching out with senses Marcus did not understand. The bonds are unstable, Nova said, but not permanently. They are just confused. Lyra picked up a glass tube of contaminated water. As she held it, the liquid inside began to glow faintly. I can see the exact places where things went wrong, she whispered. Each individual molecule. The pattern of how they connected incorrectly. Marcus stared at them. What are you talking about? You cannot see molecules with your eyes. But as he watched, something incredible began to happen. The 3 Etherians stood in a triangle around the table of poisoned samples. They did not touch the containers, but the liquids inside began to change. The murky brown color slowly became clear. The terrible smell faded away. What are you doing? Marcus asked in amazement. We are fixing them, Zephyr said. Their voice sounded distant, like they were concentrating very hard. We can feel every atom, every connection. We can sense which ones are wrong and guide them back to being right. Marcus grabbed a testing kit and quickly analyzed one of the cleared samples. His hands shook as he read the results. Perfect. The contamination is completely gone. The water is cleaner than it was before we started the terraforming project. We can do more than the small samples, Nova said. But we will need to work together, and we will need to be at the source of the problem. 1 hour later, Marcus drove all 3 Etherians to Section 7 in his research vehicle. The area looked like a disaster zone. Dead plants covered the ground in twisted shapes. The air smelled like rotten eggs mixed with metal. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked, as they climbed out of the vehicle. This contamination could hurt you. It cannot hurt us, Lyra said calmly. We can sense exactly what it is. It has no power to harm us when we understand it completely. The 3 Etherians walked hand in hand into the center of the contaminated zone. Marcus followed at a distance, wearing a protective suit and breathing mask. In the middle of the dead plants, the Etherians stood in their triangle formation again. But this time, something much bigger began to happen. Light started flowing between them. Not regular light, but something that made the air itself look different. Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation. Like the moment before lightning strikes. We can feel the contamination under the ground, Zephyr called out. It goes down almost a kilometer. Into the main water table. We are tracing every drop of poisoned water, Lyra added, following the paths it took through the soil. Now we fix it, Nova said. The light between them grew brighter. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate slightly. Marcus watched in amazement as the dead plants around them slowly stood up straight. Their brown leaves turned green. Their withered branches became strong again. But the changes were not limited to plants. Marcus could smell the difference in the air. It was becoming clean and fresh. Underground, he knew, billions of gallons of poisoned water were being cleaned molecule by molecule. The process took 3 hours. When it finished, the 3 Ethereans collapsed to their knees, exhausted but smiling. "It is done," Lyra said weakly. "All of it. The entire contamination is gone." Marcus ran back to his vehicle and began taking measurements. Every test confirmed what his eyes were already telling him. The disaster was not just fixed. The land was healthier than it had been before the terraforming project began. "How is this possible?" Marcus asked as he helped Nova stand up. "We think it is connected to why we cannot have children," Zephyr explained. "Our bodies put all their energy into understanding the world around us, instead of creating new life. We can sense and change matter at the smallest level." "You saved the entire colony," Marcus said in wonder. 50,000 people get to stay on their home planet because of you 3. That evening, the emergency broadcast announced that the crisis was over. Water tests showed complete safety across the entire planet. The news reporters could not explain how the contamination had disappeared so quickly. Marcus sat on his porch with his extended family, watching the sunset over New Terra. Emma and Jamie played in the yard, laughing as they chased each other around the newly healthy plants. "The people who sold us called us worthless," Nova said quietly. "They saw only what you could not do," Marcus replied. "They never bothered to discover what you could do." Lyra smiled. "We never knew either. We thought we were broken." "You are not broken," Marcus said firmly. "You are exactly what this universe needed. The question is, what do you want to do now that you know?" The 3 Ethereans looked at each other. For the first time in their lives, they had a choice about their future. And they had a family to help them figure out what that choice should be. The news traveled fast across the galaxy. What had happened on New Terra was impossible, according to every scientific textbook. 50,000 people had been saved from planetary evacuation by an environmental miracle that no one could explain. At first, the reports focused on Dr. Marcus Chen's brilliant terraforming work. But some journalists dug deeper. They asked questions about how one small research station had solved a problem that the best scientists in the galaxy could not fix. 3 weeks after the crisis ended, Marcus received an encrypted message on his communication system. The sender was someone he had hoped never to hear from again. "Dr. Chen, this is Administrator Vex of the Galactic Confederation Breeding Authority. We need to discuss the 3 Etherean specimens you purchased at auction. Please respond within 24 hours." Marcus stared at the message for a long time before showing it to Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova. They read it in silence, their faces growing pale. "They want us back," Nova whispered. "They cannot have you back," Marcus said firmly. "You are free beings. You belong to yourselves." But 2 days later, 3 large ships appeared in New Terra's sky. They landed near Marcus's research station without asking permission. Soldiers in gray uniforms poured out, followed by a tall alien with too many eyes. Administrator Vex walked to Marcus's front door and knocked politely. When Marcus answered, Vex smiled with a mouth full of sharp teeth. "Dr. Chen, we need to talk." Marcus invited him inside, where Vex looked around the modest home with obvious disgust. Emma and Jamie hid behind their father, staring at the frightening visitor. The 3 Ethereans stood together near the kitchen, holding hands. "You have been keeping important information from the Galactic Confederation," Vex said without greeting anyone. "These 3 specimens are not ordinary Ethereans. Their names are Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova," Marcus said coldly. "And they are my family members, not specimens." Vex ignored him. "Our scientists have analyzed what happened during your terraforming crisis. The molecular-level environmental manipulation that occurred is only possible for one type of being. These 3 are shepherds." "What are shepherds?" Jamie asked before Marcus could stop him. Vex turned his many eyes toward the boy. "Shepherds are legendary Ethereans who can heal entire planets. We thought they were extinct. They have not been seen for over 1,000 years." He turned back to Marcus. Do you understand what this means? These three beings could solve the environmental problems of hundreds of worlds. They could save billions of lives. That sounds wonderful, Marcus said carefully. They can choose to help whoever they want to help. Vex laughed. Choose? Dr. Chen, these are the most valuable beings in the galaxy. They cannot be wasted on domestic duties in a tiny research station. The Confederation is reclaiming them under Emergency Powers Act 7. You sold them to me, Marcus said, his voice getting angry. You called them worthless and defective. That was a mistake, Vex admitted. The breeding facilities did not know what they were looking at. But now we do. The Confederation needs these shepherds for critical galactic environmental projects. Lyra stepped forward. What if we do not want to go? Vex stared at her like she had said something insane. What you want is not important. You are resources, not citizens. The Confederation owns the right to deploy you where you will do the most good. They are citizens of New Terra now, Marcus said. I filed the paperwork myself. Local citizenship cannot override Confederation authority, Vex replied smoothly. We are prepared to compensate you for your loss. 5 million credits for each specimen. 15 million total. Marcus felt Emma grab his hand tightly. They are not for sale. Everything is for sale, Dr. Chen. The only question is price. We could offer you 50 million credits. With that much money, you could buy 100 household servants. I do not want servants, Marcus said. I want my family. Vex's expression grew cold. Dr. Chen, you have 48 hours to prepare these specimens for transport. If you refuse to cooperate, we will take them by force and charge you with obstruction of galactic security. After Vex left, the house felt very quiet. Emma started crying. Jamie paced around the living room, his hands clenched into fists. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, with his head in his hands. We should go with them, Zephyr said softly. No, Emma cried. You cannot leave us. We could help many people, Nova said. Is it selfish to stay here when we could save entire worlds? Marcus looked up at them. It is not selfish to want freedom. And it is not selfish to want to choose your own life. But what about all those people who need help? Lyra asked. There will always be people who need help, Marcus said. The question is whether you help them as free beings making your own choices, or as tools being used by someone else. That evening, Marcus sent messages to everyone he knew in the scientific community. He called journalists, politicians, and activist groups. He told them the truth about what was happening on New Terra. The three Etherians spent the night talking through their telepathic connection. They had never faced such a difficult choice. They wanted to help people, but they also wanted to stay with the family that loved them. What do you think we should do? Nova asked Marcus the next morning. Marcus smiled sadly. I think you should do whatever feels right to you. But I want you to know that whatever you choose, you will always be welcome here. This will always be your home. The second day passed too quickly. That evening, Vex returned with more soldiers and transport vehicles. Have you prepared the specimens for departure? He asked. We have decided what we want to do, Lyra said, stepping forward with Zephyr and Nova beside her. Vex smiled. Excellent. The transport ships are ready. We want to help people who need environmental healing, Zephyr continued. But we want to do it as free beings, not as property of the Confederation. Vex's smile disappeared. That is not one of your options. Then we refuse to go, Nova said quietly. Soldiers, Vex called out. Prepare the restraint devices. Gray uniformed troops stepped forward carrying metal collars that hummed with electric energy. Marcus moved protectively in front of the three Etherians. You cannot do this, he said. We can do whatever is necessary for galactic security, Vex replied. Seize the specimens. As the soldiers moved forward, something unexpected happened. The air around the three Etherians began to shimmer. The soldiers' weapons stopped working. Their restraint collars fell apart in their hands. We are shepherds, Lyra said, and her voice carried new power. We can change matter itself. Did you really think metal chains could hold us? The soldiers looked nervously at their broken equipment. You can try to force us, Zephyr said. But we will not cooperate. And without our cooperation, we cannot heal anything. Vex stared at them, his many eyes wide with surprise. These specimens were refusing to obey orders. No one had taught him how to deal with that. This is not over, he said finally. The Confederation will not accept this refusal. As the ships flew away, Marcus put his arms around his extended family. The fight was not finished yet. But at least they were still together. Marcus did not sleep that night. He sat at his desk, thinking about the Confederation's threat. Administrator Vex would be back with more ships and more soldiers. Next time, they might not be so gentle. But Marcus was not just a scientist. He was also human. And humans had a reputation across the galaxy for being stubborn about fairness. The next morning, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. I am calling a galactic press conference, he announced to his family over breakfast. What is that? Emma asked. It is when you talk to news reporters from many different worlds at the same time, Marcus explained. I am going to tell everyone the truth about what happened here. Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova looked worried. The Confederation will be angry, Nova said. They are already angry, Marcus replied. But they care about what other people think. If enough beings across the galaxy hear our story, the Confederation will have to listen. Marcus spent the entire day contacting journalists, scientists, and political leaders. He scheduled the press conference for that evening, when most of the galaxy would be watching their news broadcasts. At 7 o'clock, Marcus stood in front of cameras that would transmit his words to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. His children stood beside him, wearing their best clothes. The 3 Etherians stood behind them, tall and graceful and calm. My name is Dr. Marcus Chen, he began. I live on New Terra with my family. 3 weeks ago, my family saved 50,000 people from an environmental disaster. Today, the Galactic Confederation wants to take 3 of my family members away and force them to work as tools. He paused, looking directly into the main camera. I want to tell you about Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova. 6 months ago, they were sold at auction as defective breeding stock. The Confederation's own scientists called them worthless failures. No one wanted them. Behind him, the 3 Etherians stepped forward. But I did not buy them to be breeding stock, Marcus continued. I bought them because they looked sad and afraid, and I thought they deserved to be part of a family that would love them. Emma moved closer to Lyra and took her hand. These 3 beings are called shepherds. They can heal entire planets. They saved our world when our own scientists could not. But here's the important part. The Confederation had them for decades and never discovered their abilities. Marcus's voice grew stronger. Do you know why? Because the Confederation only looked at what Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova could not do. They never bothered to discover what they could do. They never treated them as individuals with their own thoughts and feelings. Jamie stepped forward and spoke into the microphone. They read me stories every night. Nova taught me how to cook. Zephyr helps my dad with science experiments. They are not tools. They are my family. Marcus nodded to his son, then continued. The Confederation wants to take them away and force them to heal damaged worlds. That sounds good, right? But here is my question. Why should beings who were treated as worthless slaves become saviors for the same people who abused them? Now Lyra stepped up to the microphone. Her musical voice carried clearly across the galaxy. We want to help heal damaged worlds, she said. But we want to choose which worlds to help. We want to work as partners, not as property. We want to be treated as people, not as tools. Zephyr joined her at the microphone. The Confederation says they need us to save billions of lives. But they never asked us what we wanted. They never asked us how we would prefer to work. They just decided to take us away from the only family we have ever known. Nova spoke last. We have a different idea. We want to start our own organization. We will travel to worlds that need environmental healing. But we will go as free beings making our own choices. Any planet that treats us with respect and works with us as partners, we will help them. Any planet that tries to force us or own us, we will not help them. Marcus stepped back to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen across the galaxy, this is what I propose. Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova will establish the first interspecies environmental consulting company. They will be based here on New Terra, where they are citizens and family members. They will help any world that asks respectfully for their help. He looked directly into the camera again. But they will not be owned. They will not be forced. They will choose their own work and their own lives. Because that is what free beings do. The press conference lasted for 2 more hours. Journalists from hundreds of worlds asked questions. Scientists wanted to know about the Shepherd's abilities. Politicians wanted to know about the legal implications. But the most important moment came when a reporter from the Etherian homeworld asked a question. Lyra, Zephyr, Nova. Do you speak for yourselves, or is the human controlling what you say? 1. All 3 Etherians laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. We have telepathic abilities, Lyra said. If Dr. Chen was controlling our thoughts, we would know immediately. We speak for ourselves because, for the first time in our lives, we have selves to speak for. Within hours, the story spread across the galaxy. Social networks buzzed with discussion. Environmental groups supported the Shepherd's right to choose their work. Civil rights organizations called for new laws, protecting the rights of artificial beings. Most importantly, damaged worlds began sending respectful requests for help directly to Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova. 3 days later, Administrator Vex returned to New Terra. But this time, he came alone, without soldiers or threats. The Confederation Council has voted, he said to Marcus. We accept your proposal. You accept their proposal, Marcus corrected. This was their choice, not mine. Vex nodded reluctantly. We are establishing the Chen Accords, new galactic laws that protect the rights of all artificial beings to choose their own lives and work. He turned to the 3 Etherians. The first official request comes from Kepler 438b. Their industrial pollution has made their oceans acidic. 2 billion beings live there. They are asking respectfully for your help, and they promise to treat you as honored guests, not as tools. Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova looked at each other through their telepathic link, then smiled. We accept, Nova said. We will go to Kepler 438b as representatives of our new company. What will you call your company? Vex asked. The 3 Etherians looked at Marcus and his children. Chosen Family Environmental Solutions, Zephyr said. Because we learned that being chosen is more powerful than being owned. 5 years later, Marcus stood in the garden behind his research station. It was much larger now, with buildings for the dozens of former, defective beings who had found their way to New Terra. The planet had become a safe haven for artificial beings who wanted to choose their own lives. Emma, now 13, was learning advanced chemistry from a crystal-based being who had been discarded for having the wrong color. Jamie, now 17, managed the communication systems that connected their growing organization with environmental projects across the galaxy. Lyra, Zephyr, and Nova returned home between missions to the worlds they chose to help. They had healed 43 planets so far. But they always came back to New Terra. They always came home. Dad, Emma called from the garden. Nova is teaching me how to grow plants that clean water. Want to see? Marcus smiled and walked toward his daughter. Around him, beings from dozens of species worked together, laughed together, and chose their own futures together. He thought about the auction where he had first seen 3 sad, scared beings who were called worthless. He thought about how fear and loneliness had brought them together, and he thought about how love and choice had made them family. The galaxy was a better place now. Not because the shepherds were healing damaged worlds, though that was important. The galaxy was better because beings everywhere were learning that being different was not the same as being wrong, that being unable to do one thing did not make you worthless, that everyone deserved the chance to be chosen, to be valued, to be loved. Marcus had always believed that a family was not about being perfect. It was about choosing to love people anyway. Now, Thousands of worlds across the galaxy were learning the same lesson, and it all started with one lonely man who saw three beings that nobody else wanted and decided they deserved to be chosen.